bang, bro. Hong Kong is a city that never sleeps. At night, from the height of Victoria Peak, Hong Kong looks like a dream city. The glitter of neon lights from skyscrapers reflects an unshakable economic power. The streets of the business districts are always crowded with people dressed neatly, rushing with quick steps, as if to give the impression that time is far too precious to waste. Yet, in the corners of this city lies another face that is rarely highlighted by the media. Behind the luxury of Hong Kong, there exists a life that is nothing short of suffering. A bitter reality endured by hundreds of thousands of people. Those who cannot afford to buy or rent property in the world's most expensive housing market are forced to accept a fate of living in places that can hardly be called homes. They live in spaces the size of a coffin, known as coffin homes. Inside these cramped dwellings, they sleep, eat, and survive in rooms that eerily resemble the size of a real coffin. Hot air, suffocating atmosphere, the stench of cigarette smoke mixed with the aroma of food cooked in a shared kitchen. Each room, more accurately described as a box, is only large enough for a thin mattress and a few personal belongings. And in this extremely confined space, they live side by side with dozens of others, without privacy and without freedom. Yet this is the reality they face every single day in a city celebrated as one of the world's most advanced trading hubs. The coffin home phenomenon is not something new. Its roots can be traced back to the 1950s, when a massive wave of immigrants from mainland China came to Hong Kong seeking a better life. The rapidly increasing population left the government struggling to provide enough housing for all its residents. Initially, many people lived in cramped apartments rented at low prices. But as the economy grew and property prices skyrocketed, these apartments were further divided into smaller units. Landlords began partitioning rooms into tiny spaces to maximize profit. From here came the idea of the subdivided flat, one apartment unit divided into several smaller spaces rented out separately. Over time, the level of density became more extreme, and for those who still could not afford even subdivided flats, these too became out of reach. Thus emerged coffin homes, spaces even smaller than a prison cell. Inside such a room, a person has only enough space to lie down and keep a few personal items. According to socio reports, it is estimated that more than 200,000 people in Hong Kong currently live in such places. Entering one of the buildings housing coffin homes in the districts of Mong Kok or Sham Shui Po, you are confronted with a sight hard to believe. In one small room, there are rows of bunk beds made from plywood. Each unit is about 60 centimeters wide and 170 centimeters long, virtually the size of a coffin. Inside, tenants can lie down and store a few belongings such as clothes, food, or personal tools. Each unit has a sliding door that can be locked to provide a hint of privacy. Yet the air inside is stuffy and hot. Many residents complain about the lack of ventilation, foul odors, and high humidity that leaves walls covered in mold. Tragically, despite this torment, they must endure it with acceptance. With meager wages that must be budgeted with precision, they have no other choice but to settle for these tiny rooms. For spaces this small, tenants pay between 1,500 to 2,500 Hong Kong dollars per month, or around 3 to 5 million rupiah. Of course, this is an exorbitant price compared to the size of the dwelling they receive. Beyond the lack of space, there are also issues of hygiene and health. Since residents share facilities like toilets and kitchens with dozens of others, the risk of disease spreading is extremely high. Many suffer respiratory problems due to the poor living environment. More than that, living in such confined spaces without enough air, sunlight, or privacy is a perfect recipe for mental health disorders. According to a Socho study, more than 60% of coffin home residents suffer symptoms of depression and chronic anxiety. A sociologist from the Chinese University of Hong Kong has stated that living in coffin homes can cause psychological effects similar to living in a prison cell. When someone is confined in a small space without room to move, their brain begins to associate the place with feelings of restriction and captivity. This leads to ongoing anxiety. Some residents also feel they have no clear future, causing them to lose motivation to work or pursue better opportunities. Hong Kong is a city filled with millions of people. Yet, ironically, coffin home residents are among the loneliest. They have no private space to invite friends and no comfortable place to converse. They live side by side with dozens of others, and yet they share almost no emotional connection with them. According to a survey by the Hong Kong Social Service Council, more than 70% of coffin home residents do not have friends or family who visit often. As a result, they are more vulnerable to depression caused by loneliness. In the end, many lose their self-confidence and withdraw from social life. Hong Kong has long been known as the most expensive housing market in the world. The average price of a home in Hong Kong is about 18.8 times the annual income of its residents. This means one would need to work nearly 2 decades without spending a single dollar just to buy a house. Of course, Hong Kong was not always a city of skyscrapers. In the early 19th century, the area was still a small fishing village inhabited by coastal communities living off the sea. But everything changed when Britain took over Hong Kong from China after the First Opium War between 1839 and 1842. From that moment, Hong Kong began developing into a bustling trade port. Its strategic location in Asian waters made it a central hub for international commerce. The population began to rise rapidly. A bigger change came after World War II and the Communist Revolution in China in 1949. When the Communist Party took control in Beijing, a massive wave of refugees fled from mainland China to Hong Kong, hoping to find a better life under British rule. As a result, the city's population skyrocketed from around 600,000 people in 1945 to more than 2 million within a single decade. This population boom was the beginning of a housing crisis that continues to this day. In the 1950s and 1960s, Hong Kong was in a housing emergency. There simply were not enough homes for millions of new immigrants, and many began building squatter settlements on hillsides and city outskirts. Then, in the 1980s and 1990s, Hong Kong had already become one of the world's largest business centers. Economic deregulation and foreign investment inflows triggered a massive surge in property prices. The government began auctioning land to real estate developers at high prices, driving property prices to levels far beyond the reach of ordinary citizens. Even highly educated professionals such as teachers and engineers struggled to buy homes in their own city. Rents also rose sharply, forcing the poor to look for cheaper alternatives. Although the Hong Kong government has attempted to address the housing crisis through programs such as building subsidized housing, these efforts are widely considered insufficient because the numbers simply cannot meet the demand of the poor. The government has announced various measures to address the crisis, including plans to build more social housing and provide micro-units. However, for those currently living in coffin homes, hopes for a better future still feel very distant. Until today, hundreds of thousands in Hong Kong remain trapped in the cycle of housing poverty, living in tiny spaces unworthy of being called homes. They endure their days in uncertainty, surviving amidst the glitter of a city that seems to forget them. Meanwhile, businessmen and investors continue amassing wealth. Skyscrapers keep rising higher, and property prices soar ever further. On one side, Hong Kong remains a symbol of global prosperity. But on the other, the city also hides a dark reality, one that lurks in the shadows of its magnificence. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If there are any mistakes in the delivery, let's discuss them together in the comment section, Bang Bro. And if you enjoyed our video, please like, comment, and subscribe. See you in our next video, Bang Bro. Thank you.